Hey guys, welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. I'm Kristen and got another good story for you today. I look up the true ones that always have at least one miracle. So if you like true stories and happy endings, listen along and here we go. Picture the South China coast. It's 1981, and Bibles are being delivered to a town called Swato, and they're being delivered to over 1 million people there by a person named Pastor Chen. Now, in 1981, 4 investigators from Beijing, China, were being sent to Swato to question and interrogate Pastor Chen, who had been caught. But Pastor Chen, he was refusing to give any names of the people that were helping him deliver these Bibles to secret houses / churches, kind of like underground church type things, because it was illegal there. And again, like I said, he was refusing to give the names of those other men and women who were helping him deliver the Bibles. And they were working under a code name called Project Pearl. Now, the first investigator, as he began questioning Chen, he threatened him and he said, "Look, I know you're the leader of these illegal churches." And he also told Chen, "I know where you live here in Swato, and I also know that this is where all those Bibles were delivered." Pastor Chen just wasn't going to give up the names. In fact, the interrogators noticed that he seemed very calm and serene. He wasn't upset. He didn't seem scared. Pastor Chen closed his eyes and just prayed the whole time, pretty much. And he knew in his heart, Pastor Chen did, that
resistance is futile.
Resistance would be futile, so there's no need to fight back. Well, finally, after hours of this, the interrogators / investigators, they were tired. They were like, this is exhausting. So they took Pastor Chen out to the middle of the courtyard at the prison, and they made him stand on a tall wooden box in the middle of the courtyard. Now, most prisoners, this is the time they'd probably get beaten, but they were not going to beat Chen. And the reason being is because they already saw how frail he was, and they also saw that he just didn't seem scared of dying. However, they did put a rope around his neck, hung it, and had him stand there, not much room to move on the wooden box. It was about 4 feet tall. And they basically told him, hey, when you get tired enough, your legs are going to give out and you'll just hang yourself. And one of the interrogators told him verbatim, "That is the penalty for your stubbornness." Now, as Pastor Chen stood there on the box, still has the rope around his neck, he's just watching, and the two of the investigators of the 4 just kind of sat there guarding him, and they began to play games, just dice games and, gambling, because they had to sit there and do something until Chen tired out. So Chen just kind of watched him, and he had a thought come to his mind, and he was like, wow, this kind of reminds me of when Jesus hung on the cross and the 2 guards played games and gambled for his clothing. And he just would imagine in that moment how Jesus must have felt. I mean, obviously it wasn't the same, but the situation where the guards and the investigators are playing games while he's just waiting to die, that situation was the same. And Chen was just sad because he thought of how Jesus must felt in that moment. And he knew in his heart that this would soon be his end. But he had a thought also occur to him. And Pastor Chen thought, if I'm going out swinging. And so he decided that he was going to witness to those 2 investigators. And he said to him, quote, "Have you ever heard of Jesus?" And one of the men said, "Quiet, Christian. We don't want to hear about your Jesus." It's just an old myth. And Chen, he kind of told him about Jesus. Like, no, it's no myth. How he came down, he was born, he was hung on the cross for everybody's sins in the whole world, and how he rose on the third day. And he also said, kind of towards the end, he told him, hey, look, guys, Jesus is my savior, and I'm not afraid of dying because I know where I'm about to go. I'm about to be in heaven. One of the investigators just kind of giggled and laughed and made fun of, and he said, quote, old man, when I get to be 70 and look as unhealthy as you, I won't be afraid of death either, end quote. Well, the minutes became hours, the hours became days, and yet Chen, he still stood there. His body wanted to give in so bad because he was so tired. He was like, if I could just sleep a little. But he couldn't, because if he just lost focus for a moment, he would give way and it would hang him. So he refused to give in, even though his legs were just shaking so badly because of all the cramps he had developed from standing so still for days. And eventually, as the days went on, Chen's legs doubled in size because they were so swollen. Chen says that the only relief that he received while standing there was when it rained, because it felt so good coming down a cold shower. He could stick out his tongue and get moisture on his mouth because he hadn't had any water, food, or rest. And he said it also felt good on his body because, of course, he was dirty from standing there and sweaty, so it just felt like a good cleansing, he said. 7 days had gone by. Chen is still standing with no food, water, rest, the whole gamut, none of it. And he's still going strong. And by day 9, the whole prison had heard that Pastor Chen is still alive. He's still out there. And so it was unbelievable to the whole prison. And it was especially unbelievable to the investigators. They were like, why is this man not dying? This is impossible. No man has ever lasted this long. Well, day 13 came, and a big thunderstorm began to roll in. It was pouring down rain just like mad, and the skies were filled all over throughout the whole sky, just of lightning and thunder, and it was a pretty bad storm. And Chen, he was losing hope because, well, I don't know if losing hope's the right word, but he knew his end was very, very near because his legs were so wobbly. He had not an ounce of energy left, and he could feel the rope begin to tighten on his neck as he's starting to give way. Then, in the next few moments, Chen just remembers kind of coming to, and some men were splashing water on his face, and it felt good on his puffy, swollen, dry lips. So he was kind of coming to and very confused by what was going on. And then he noticed the next thing that someone had propped Chen's legs up on a chair so as to get the blood flow going back throughout his body. And as that occurred, all of a sudden, because of that blood pumping throughout, Chen could feel like just severe pain all throughout his body. He said it was unimaginable. And then he looked over at the 2 people that were helping him that had propped his legs and were splashing water, and they were rubbing his wrists to help him come to. And it was the 2 men who mocked him. It was 2 of the investigators that pretty much hated him. So why were they helping him? And one of the men, the investigators, he said, quote, quick, don't die, please. You've got to wake up. And then Chen answered him and said, why? What's going on? One of the men said, please, we want to know how to know your Savior, Jesus. And then the second man spoke up and explained that just as Chen's legs were giving way and he was about to hang himself, pretty much it did, but lightning clapped down from the sky and broke the rope right above his head, so that as he's falling and it's about to happen, in the perfect moment, it snapped in half and Chen's body fell to the ground from exhaustion. So it was so miraculous, and they knew that it had to be this Jesus, Pastor Chen's Savior. So they spoke to Chen and they said, we have to know him too. And that day, they did come to know Jesus as their Savior. Chen, along with the two investigators, they cried as it's still pouring down rain, and the two men just repented of their sins and they asked Jesus to come into their lives. And then a great ending to this story. Pastor Chen was released shortly thereafter. And the reason being, not one of those investigators or anybody that worked in that prison had the courage or bravery to basically question Chen again. After seeing that miraculous thing happen, they were like, no way. I don't want any part. We'll just let him go. So, what a story. Just when you think all was lost and, God saved Chen's life. This story, it was really cool. It just kind of made me think, sometimes when we wonder, why did that happen? When something so awful happens in your life and you just think, what is the reason? There's no reason. But always try to keep in the back of your mind, there's always a reason. It's so hard, though. Sometimes you don't know it right away. Sometimes you don't know it for years, why a bad thing happened in your life. But eventually you look back and you see, whether that's minutes, hours, days, or years later, and you say, oh, yeah, had that not happened, then this wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't be here, or I wouldn't have this job, or I wouldn't have, there's so many scenarios, but you can look back and see. And the reason why I bring that up is because in Pastor Chen's story, I'm sure he might have had those thoughts like, why me? I was doing a good deed, helping people by giving them Bibles, and then they try to kill me, right? But if you think about it, the Lord didn't do that to him, but he did allow it to happen. And had it not, those two investigator men would have never come to know God. So that right there, and there could be other reasons. That's just two we know of. But the rest of the prison knew about it as well. So just an amazing story. And I did not picture an ending like that. I really thought when I was reading through the story, oh gosh, what's going to be the miracle in this? Because I really thought Pastor Chen was not going to make it. So that was a surprise ending to me. Let me know what your thoughts are on this, or just on any thoughts in general, like when bad things happen, what do you do to get past that or move past it so that it doesn't drag you down, in depression and all the negativity, basically? Let me know. I hope you guys are having a great week, and thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to see you guys for the next one.